University. To thank Information Architecture Institute for their co-sponsorship of this series. And our mission is to promote open forum ideas to be shared and discussed among professionals and students in user experience design. You can see past presentations by speakers about the series or talks of your own at unect.wordpress.com. You can send tweets at unect and following hashtag, it's UXConnect, to tweet about us. So today, let me just give you a little background. The format is we have this talk on the first and third Mondays at noon. Speaker just for about 30 to 40 minutes, and leave the remainder of the Q&A. And use WebEx chat for questions, and make sure you send them out to everyone so everyone can see the question. Okay, so Beecher, Fred's been working in user experience design. 98. Next, mature from field struggling to provide value to one driving an explosion of innovation and economic growth. Ever increasing demand, this explosion has sparked. Fred designed and implemented the UX apprenticeship he currently manages at the Nerdery in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Fred is an established contributor in the UX world. In 2002, he authored the first official training program, which he ran until 2012. He has written some blog posts on prototyping, iterative design, and UX career development, and he has spoken on these topics at design conferences worldwide. And his talk is UX designers, practical UX apprenticeship. The experience design skyrocketed. Interest as a career has followed along with that demand. A UX designer gets asked how to get in a career, but the sad fact is there's no answer to that question. Although high, the demand is only for designers with 2 to 3 years experience or more. There are simply enough experienced designers to fill these positions, and this experience gap is a barrier to offering potential designers a consistent path from interest to employment. Many of that design is a craft. How do you learn this craft? Education and experience is the answer to that. Apprenticeship is a model that fits that bill, and during the summer and fall of 2013, the Nerdery UX team practice. I'll turn this over to Fred. This interaction goes on a little bit longer, but I think that kind of fits into his time and what he's going to say. I would also like to say that in 2 weeks, we have 2 graduates of the apprenticeship program speak about their experience in that apprenticeship. So on the 17th, Monday the 17th at noon Eastern, I would like for you to think back and hearing that. I think that's going to be pretty good. So Mike, I want to thank Mike Rio, who's our GA here, who's taking care of managing this presentation, and he's going to turn the presentation over to Fred.
Okay. Everyone for coming to this today. To let you know, the formal title for the apprentices who you'll hear in a couple of weeks is senior apprentices, or I sometimes call them ex-apprentices. We have a little fun with that over there. But all right, so I think that was as good an introduction as could possibly be made. So thank you, David, for that. I appreciate that. But here is an accurate representation of the demand for user experience design talent. And I'm more of a visual guy. Jared Spool is more of a give me the actual number guy. So Jared's research has revealed that there is approximately 150,000 UX-related positions at any one time in the United States alone. So if you are a UX designer and you're getting tons of recruiting emails, this is why. The other reason, yes?
Fred, did you share your desktop?
me check.
Because I'm not seeing a thing.
Let's see. Keynote is not letting me out of this. Goodness. I cannot get my presentation. Anything.
Yeah.
None is working. Escape doesn't work. Okay. Is there any way you guys can't set it up for me? Okay. Can I alt escape? Let's try that. There we go. No. Try this again. Okay.
Okay, great.
All right. So that's my visualization of the demand. So this is a good solution for a field, but the problem with our field is that the supply of that talent is woefully inadequate. And part of the reason that that's a problem is because if we're able to provide the value that user experience design promises, if this is going to go elsewhere for differentiation. Because right now we're kind of in a golden age because business sees the value of design and is extremely hungry for it. So I feel we need to respond to that and really make it so that we have the people resources to provide the value that they're looking for. Part of for this situation that we have is there's been tons of success with well-designed products in the recent past. So if you have someone who wants to get into user experience design, there's not really a consistent path into this field. Of people that I've talked to, and my experience as well bears this out, 9% of it is dumb luck. And the dumb luck that is essentially a path that you sort of stumble through. You cover something about psychology, something about design, something about technology, and eventually a light bulb goes off, and you realize there's this thing called user experience design. It's an actual job that you can do. Then you do it, and of course you can't because you don't have any experience in it. Now we do have one path that's relatively consistent that you can go through is you can go to a design school in order to get into the user experience design field. The problem with this, though, is there are a limited number of programs. First off, second, you have to actually pick and move for 2 years to your master's degree in interaction design or human-computer interaction, whatever it is, and work for that time. So very difficult for people who have established careers or families or mortgages to do that sort of thing. Unfortunately, there's like Kent State who are beginning to offer online programs. So I think that's a change. But the idea is that most user experience design educational programs are appropriate for people at a much earlier stage in their lives. Now things are happening where we are having the educational disruption into online courses, we've also got special tools like the Unicorn Institute popping up. And about that, this is Jared School's user experience design vocational school, where you go and for years you essentially you learn all user experience design methods that a generalist would need, and you are expected to work on between 5 and 6 different client projects. So a really great way to do that user experience, the experience and user experience design that you need to get into a more permanent job after that. But again, with this, it's something that you have to pick up and move to Chattanooga for 2 years. So while it makes it a little bit more accessible, because you will have that 2 years of experience on your resume after this, it's still a little bit difficult for people in different life situations to get to that. So I'm proposing that apprenticeship can help up the bulk rents. That if you have a design team, you can have a apprenticeship program. That program wouldn't be exactly the way that we have done it at the Nerdery, but we'll give you that's one of the focuses of this particular presentation. So that design is so difficult to get into at this point is something that I call the experience gap. The demand for your experience design is for people with 2 or more years of experience, and or not all of this, but all the interest is from people who don't have any years of experience in user experience design. So this is the experience gap. I used to absolutely rail against gap because I felt that junior designers still have a lot to offer. However, what I think can really bridge this gap is apprenticeship. Because apprenticeship does is that it provides with an infrastructure to tap into the people who are interested in UX design but who don't have any years of experience. For example, at the Nerdery, with our job posting, we specifically ask for people with 0 years of experience in user experience design. I absolutely loved writing that job posting. But I do, and what has happened in our own program, this has definitely borne out. So I'll give you a quick introduction to our program. These are the 8 new user experience designers who now exist as a result of the program. 5 are currently employed with us. One of them will be with us this summer when he finishes school. And 2 of them got recruited away from us for ridiculously large salaries, and 1 is currently freelancing. So it has definitely been successful for us, and we're actually currently recruiting for the summer and fall cohorts for 2014. A few stats about our program. It's 2 weeks long. Now, this is way short. I feel like it should be 6 months at an absolute minimum. But this is what they wanted in order for us to be able to do this. So we jumped through a few hoops in order to accomplish this in weeks, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Each on us average 252 hours of mentorship with another designer. So that could be with me or any of the other designers on the team. We drew 20 different design methods that we use at the Nerdery. There are 13 workshops that people go through, and this is average around 20 pages of reflection. So there's a lot of stuff in the apprenticeship program. Talk about the structure of that right now. So the whole point of the program is to only create something that's going to work for Nerdery, but to create an infrastructure that can be adapted by any organization. And so we've started calling this is our apprenticeship architecture. 5 components to this architecture. First, what is the business value of the program? Is that we are people based on their traits rather than their talent, which is a much different sort of a situation than hiring a middle senior level designer. Third component is pedagogy, which is essentially a condensed way of bringing to a system of teaching. So what we've come up with a system of teaching user experience design. And the big components of pedagogy is mentorship. So it gets pulled out as its own thing. Mentorship is absolutely the focus of our program. And finally, this all sort of sits on top of detailed tracking. One of the things that leadership is often confused with is internship, and that's, if you talk more about that later, we can. But and internship are very, very different. And one of the ways that it's different is that internship is more focused and more rigorous. So a lot of that rigor is expressed within the concept of tracking. So we're tracking how many hours people are doing what and at which level. We're tracking both qualitative and quantitative feedback from tourists. We're tracking how the experience of the program itself is going. We're tracking all sorts of different things. So that is to really develop, or in that an apprentice develops into a junior level designer over time. So our start at some of the more detailed elements of this architecture, and I'm going to start by talking about business value. Now, value of apprentice absolutely has to be there and has to be clearly articulated in order for this program to be successful. Because when I started doing this, I wasn't the director of anything or the VP of anything. I was a designer who was passionate and had an idea. So to do this, I needed to gain from people who had a little more weight in the organization and who could go to that for me. And part of that was really articulate the value. So one of the things that I did was to sales staff, and found out that 2012 we lost out on approximately $2 million worth of work because our UX team couldn't be robust enough because we were busy finishing other projects. I also did our human resources folks and found out that it usually took about 2 months and $7,700 to recruit a mid-senior level designer into our organization. So a lot of business value right there. Only, at Nerdery, we are a client services organization, which means that we do project work for other clients. So the more people we have, the more money we can make, and we charge an hourly rate. So the hourly rate that we charge for everyone is the same, but because apprentices are new, they're less than someone like me who has been doing it for a really long time. So a junior designer is actually technically more profitable for us than someone like me. Hopefully I have other values, otherwise my job is not long for this world. But this is just what's valuable to the Nerdery. I've talked with other people who have done apprenticeship programs, and their value structure has been completely different. For there's a fresh tilled soil out of Boston, and they actually try not to hire their apprentices is they try to get their apprentices hired with their clients. So what that does is that creates an intimate and relationship. One or two of their apprentices in the past, but it's very interesting. So they try not to. Their approach to it is very different from ours, but that's what's valuable to their organization. Also, depending on how you structure apprenticeship, because the people who are apprenticed to you, they're doing work. So if they're doing work that is moving it forward, you can share that work. Now, this is different if you are a services organization like us, or independent business like a Target or something like that. But the fact is that apprentices are doing work, so it can help offset some of its own cost, because apprenticeship does cost something. For us, what we is that for one course, bring everything in, it costs about $70,000. So money, but make up a lot of that through apprentices actually on projects, as well as the profitability of apprentices once they become junior designers at our organization. All right, this is one slide upon which I could do an entire talk. Hiring an apprentice, a much different thing than hiring a senior level designer. This is when we're apprentice, for example, not focused on their experience. We're not really looking at a portfolio. They may have a portfolio or some sort of example work, but it is drastically insufficient if you were going to measure that against a senior level work. It is also may not have been done with a UX that necessarily, because it may have been done before we covered it. What we ended up doing is we focused on traits within people rather than we're focusing on experience and their skills. So there are two sets of traits that we find to be particularly important. First off, to look at the traits of experienced designer. You have to find out, whether the people that you're hiring as an apprentice have the raw material to be good UX designer. The most important one, I think, is passion, because experience design is not a job, it's a calling. So it was like, this job seems like a good match to some of my tasks. Something that doesn't ping the passion bell. But if you see in some eyes where they're talking about the moment where they realize that user design was a thing, and that it could world better by making technology less painful to use, or whatever it might be, then that really says about that person, and that person is going to be self-motivated to go everything that apprenticeship requires. I'm not going to talk about all of these, but that's definitely the most important one. The other set of traits to look at is to decide whether a person will be a good apprentice. And with this, it's absolutely critical that people are capable of accepting feedback. If there is anyone on the presentation who is going to planning on applying for the apprenticeship, give away a big secret. So make sure you write this down. One of the ways that we evaluate this is we will something in a work sample that a potential apprentice is showing us. It may be a big deal. It might be something as simple as the page numbers. or it could be, the button on the left, anything like that. And what we're looking for is to see how people respond to critical feedback. Are they open and thankful to receive it, or defensive and standoffish? Because if they get defensive about receiving critical feedback, they're not a good experience as an apprentice, because this is all about not doing it the first time and finding out through critical feedback. So that's the absolute most important one. The other one is that we need to find who are self-educators, because leadership there's a solid infrastructure. The entire team supports it, but really, if people are motivated to educate themselves, they're not going to get as much out of it as they could. Going to actually tax the rest of the team a little bit more. You have to continually push people to do things that they need to do in order to educate themselves. And there could potentially be a third cat of traits to look for, and there would be traits that are to your organization. So, for example, at the Nerdery, we consciously cultivate our culture. So, culture is critical for us. So, we make sure that when we hire an apprentice, we keep in the fact that we are hiring someone who's going to be a designer with us for some time. So, we need to make sure that that person is going to live in our culture and contribute positively to that culture. So, a different type of an organization, you're a nonprofit or something like that, maybe you want someone who's particularly passionate about whatever issue it is that your nonprofit is trying to solve. These sets of traits are absolutely required, and there'd be a third set depending on your type of organization. The pedagogy of our apprenticeship program is focused around four things: learning, observation, practice, and play. Each of these individually, but we'll spend a lot of time talking about practice, because if to the architecture, mentorship is essentially its own component of the apprenticeship architecture, and is essentially the practice element of pedagogy. So, we're talking about learning. What I'm specifically talking about is exposed to the new ideas that they may not be familiar with. So, with RAM, what we do is we teach 20 different user experience design methods, and most come into the program are going to know experience with all of those things. So the thing that we have to do is we have to expose them to ideas and basics of how to execute them. So is essentially two things. We do a series of workshops, and we do a series of reading. Originally, the reading was tied with the workshops, and it is still that kind of, but workshops are a little bit more independent. And with the workshops, the idea is that I'll give to the cohort of apprentices, and to, for example, ideas around user research, business discovery, or things like that. Being a lot of them to the work of thought leaders in our industry, such as we've got game storming here. We use a lot. Project UX is another important book for us, because it really shows all of the things that a user experience designer does all in one little book. Portugal's interviewing book is, I'm glad that came out just before the apprenticeship program began. My life a lot easier. But yeah, there's a lot of really good work out there that has been done and represented in book form now. So the apprentices actually have their own book club every Friday, and they will together and discuss what they have read and sort of make their own meaning out of it. Whereas perhaps that's my opportunity to sort of expose them to things in the way I think about them. So with the observation part, that is also part of the mentorship, and we'll get to there. But so learning, now I want to look at play a little bit. One of the things that I was not expecting to happen was to do internal projects, because I came with a very strong bias against internal projects, because that's what interns do. And as I said before, interns and apprentices are very, very different. But what we were finding was that, back up a little bit. When I was talking about those 25 methods that we train people on, in order to get the apprenticeship program to be all effective in 12 weeks, what we did is we made it so that apprentice would work with design on a method by method basis. Is that for an apprentice in a given week, they could be working on one project with one designer doing use, working on another project with another designer doing this discovery, and yet another designer do process flows and wireframes for yet another different project. So they're getting all these methods individually. In the first cohort, what I was hearing from them is that they did that, but they really see how those methods sort of flowed together to really solve a problem. And so I tried and made up an internal project for them. And yet up, but it achieved the goal. The apprentices worked on that project together as a team, and what we found was that they found it extremely valuable together and to solve these problems as a team. So we built an internal project in the second cohort, and in the fourth cohort, we're actually trying to a nonprofit or other charitable organization out there that has a problem that needs solving, and to actually work with them to solve their real design problem. And one of the program at the Nerdery is that our side has gotten the education bug as well. So there's a lot of work going on among our doers on getting them. So a PhD developer learn iOS development, for example. So what we do is have the apprentices work with the novice developers on actually implementing the design that they come up with. So that'd be a pretty good educational experience for everyone involved, and I'm very, very much looking forward to making that happen. All right, so we need to talk about mentorship. This is by far the most important part of apprenticeship, and I think with this is what it really defines it distinct from internship, because it is really what makes apprenticeship work. At the Nerdery, we have a very large design team, and we used that team to one of the most barriers to mentorship and apprenticeship. So think of the traditional master-apprentice model. You have master and you have apprentice. Now, that master has to spend a lot of time with that apprentice, and so that makes it a little difficult for the master to get done, because they can't just focus on their stuff. They have to worry what's happening with the apprentice as well. Even more true in our world, where things just move at such a rapid pace. People want it, but they can't, because they need to get their stuff done, and already got too much to do. So as we essentially spread the burden of mentorship through the entire team. So the role of principal mentor, that is my role. So when I have an active cohort at the Nerdery, 50% of my time is spent working with the apprentices, and the other 50% is spent on doing our client work. But it's what my goal is to ensure the overall development of the apprentices and to work with them on customizing the apprenticeship specific needs. For example, Chris was one of the apprentices, really wanted to focus on content strategy. So made sure that I was her to a lot of the content strategy stuff that was happening during the and the role or my work with the apprentices is simply aware of what is happening on all the projects under design team at any given time, so I can work with the apprentices to make sure that they're going to work with a designer who is something and executing a method that they are particularly interested in. What ends up happening is that every designer on the team, or most of them, end up with an apprentice for maybe a total of 8 hours during the entire course of a single cohort. So 5 to 8 hours isn't usually such a bad deal. People can usually swing that. Some who are particularly passionate about mentorship, very generous and offered more, but on average it was about 5 to 8 hours per designer. So we got around it. Now, this works, I think, when you have a large design team like we do at Nerdery, but you don't have quite such a large team. Maybe you've got a more modestly sized team. I think you can still take on apprentices, but you can't take on as many. And of principal mentor, probably to design manager. So what that would look like is that in addition the design manager's duties in terms of the human resources and development side of their team, for apprentices would be a little bit different. So they would be executed sort of through this frame apprenticeship, and you could also spread the burden of apprenticeship, or the burden of mentorship across this smaller team. This person's responsibility to manage the overall development of the apprentice, as well as if the apprentice was doing something that they would sit in and that was useful for them. Team. A little bit more difficult because, again, you can take on probably fewer apprentices, maybe only one. I actually heard of people who were dependent taking on an apprentice. And in this case, that's much more like the traditional model of apprenticeship. If you're in, and that's the situation that you're in, and you can do that. But the small design team, the mentor could potentially be played by someone on that team, and again, the burden of mentorship would then be split among the team as well. So talk about mentorship. What's happening is essentially 4 different things, and these 4 things are dependent upon what experience an apprentice has with a particular method, and their experience gets accountability increases. So the very first level of mentorship is simply observation. This is simply watching what an experienced designer is doing and asking them questions about why they're doing what they're doing. Actually, what this is the designer or the mentor is this think aloud technique, but their sort of daily work. Now, so you can't always do this, like, for example, during your interview. So that would need to be more of a cool inquiry situation where you go back and ask questions later. But that's the general idea, simply to get familiar with the method and see how an experienced designer uses the method. Now, there are gates to get to this. and can observe and at any time. We'll talk to gates in just a little bit and where those become important. The second of mentorship is assistance. At level, the apprentice is actually doing something that helps to move the project forward. Now, things might be menial, like organizing the explosion of data that comes out of a business discovery workshop, or helping with or user research notes, things like that. But this is important work that needs to get done on the project, which means that if you're in a services organization like myself, you can bill that time. Now, obviously, you're not going to bill very much for it. You can still bill it because it moves the project forward. The method is simply what they did before, but keeping the apprentice a little bit more occupied doing other things. It's essentially extended observation that you can charge clients for. And again, there aren't any gates to get into level either. At mentorship level, up to now, the designer or the mentor has been the person who's been actually executing the method, but at the point, it's the apprentice who executes the method, and they become accountable for at least a part of the output of the method. So imagine you're doing a prototype. Maybe the apprentice is accountable for one particular interaction or one particular use case. This is project work, so the apprentice can definitely build time against this project. The mentor steps back from a little bit of the doing and does mocking and talks the apprentice through this. So the apprentice might be putting together a prototype, and the mentor is there providing guidance. There are gates to get into this level, where you cannot operate on a design method if you have not had a shop that covers this method. To have a discussion with the mentor about when they feel ready to operate at this particular level. The level of mentorship is, or of mentorship. And what we are talking about is, again, the apprentice is executing the method and billing time against it, but it can be more independent than when in the previous level. So the mentor is only going to check in with the apprentice time to ensure that the work is up to snuff. And there's two slightly gates here. So the apprentice have to feel ready. Have a conversation with the principal mentor to say, yes, I'm ready for oversight in prototyping or whatever it may be. And the mentor has to also agree. So if an apprentice is working with my colleague Christopher on building a prototype and they're moving into oversight, I talk with Christopher to see if Christopher feels like the apprentice is ready to move to that level. So this is what I'm talking about when I talk about rigor. So I'm not putting people on projects and letting them fend for themselves. There's a specific way, or people have specific responsibilities at specific levels and specific expectations at these levels that they go through in order to gain the practice they need and the optional experience that they need in methods. We are coming up to tracking. So as before, as the principal mentor, a component of that part of my job is to track opportunities for apprentices to practice specific methods. Now, being here is the way I started doing it. I would actually work with people and buy all the projects that are happening at any one time and figure out what were happening when. Now, that is a lot of work, but our organization is starting to become more fluent with Google Apps. So what's happening now is that all of our projects, all the plans are on Google spreadsheets. Now I can just ask project lead project plans with me, so I don't have to do anything like this. Just look at the project plans and see sort of what's happening when, and dump the designers to make sure everything is okay, or is still on schedule, and they'll assign the apprentices out based on that. But understanding what's happening on your design team and what relates to the apprentices that you have is absolutely critical. A critical component of tracking is apprentice progress. So, talking about earlier with the different levels that we have, there's a experience people can have. We track how many hours people spend at that level. Now, we client service organizations, so the apprentices are tracking their hours anyway. I'd ask them to tag their time entries in a specific way so that they can take a look into to understand exactly how many hours they've spent at what level. So the quantitative aspect of the tracking that we're doing, the qualitative aspect is that those are asked to provide feedback on their experience with an apprentice. And what went well and what didn't go well are both required fields on the form that I'm asking people to sign or to fill out. So one of the rewarding, I think, in working with apprentices is the critical feedback come in, and then in the next few weeks, seeing the apprentice on improving size and seeing it actually happen. That's probably one of my favorite parts of this whole thing. So there's things that we track, but I don't have time to talk about all of the things. One of the other things that we track is the reflections, thoughts, and feelings of the apprentices. There are two reasons for this. First off, this is their mentor understand what's going on with them. So every week, I would meet with or one-on-one with each apprentice to talk what they've been learning, to talk about how things are going and stuff like that. And what I found is that apprentice really an intense time in someone's lives. There's a lot of sacrifice that has to be made in order for people, especially switching from an established career to go into an apprenticeship program. And so emotions run high. There can be frustration sometimes. There can be anxiety. But work with the apprentices on that level is incredibly rewarding, and navigate some of that and is absolutely one of my key responsibilities. And this diary that I ask them to fill out every week helps me understand what's going on with them so that we can have a meaningful, productive conversation when we're together one-on-one. And so keep the diary alone, because with the exception of the actor training program I created in 2007 and kept up until 2012, I've made an apprenticeship program before, or any sort of educational before. My only educational background is that I have an education. So keeping diary for me track things that are going well, things that aren't going so well, and things that I'm struggling with. So forget that I struggled with them and continue to struggle on and on each time, but this helps me improve the program as I go. So if you are interested in creating your own apprenticeship program, here's some recommend. The next steps should be start laying the foundation. Focus on the business value for your organization. So this might require research on your part. What your organization find valuable? Do you want to have more profitable resources? Do you want to increase your customer relationship? Do you have growth goals you're trying to meet? How can apprenticeship help address the goals of your organization? If you can question, that's a real great first step. Component of the foundation is to understand who you're going to target for example, Nerdery, we were initially thinking that we were going to target grad students, but we found that the grad students were getting recruited out from us in design roles at big companies that usually work directly with the grad programs for that reason. So we ended up focusing on people who were switching careers, and that being particularly good for us. But again, so think of any unique traits that might be unique to your particular organization in order to determine who you want to look for. And we also, if you're an experienced UX designer, you know that recruiting for your research takes way longer than you think it will. This is true for recruiting for apprentices. You will get tons and tons and tons and tons of applications. Sift through those applications will be the main task rather than trying to get people to respond. So it's going to be crucial to understand exactly what you're looking for and to have a sense as to what things would indicate where someone is there or not. So what laid and recruiting is underway. You can instructional design portion. So you'll need to think about how you teach. First off, what you're going to teach, because the 25 methods that we use at the Nerdery frequently, maybe those aren't, maybe those, or maybe your things are different things. What might be. So choose what you're going to teach, figure out how you're going to teach it, and there could be a great deal of content that you might need to create in order to make that happen. In our cohort, I would frequently complete the workshop the night before I gave it. So sort of completing this part, we're fully up and running with the apprenticeship program. And in terms of mentorship, it's really critical to define how your apprenticeship program is going to a mentorship. Is it going to be a one-on-one thing? If it's going to work for you, that's great. That has been tried and true for several hundred years. You might need to spread the burden. So how are you to do that? Feel free to steal any and all of the ideas from this presentation in order to make that happen. I can be useful, or that I highly recommend, is to figure out what apprentices should be capable of. And if you have levels of mentorship, think of what each apprentice is capable of at each of those levels. Another giant spreadsheet, but it's incredibly useful. Once you have all that in place, you can set up how you're going to track everything. So I don't know you, but I get reasonably excited about organizing things with spreadsheets, and so for this is entertaining in a way. But about how you're going to, most importantly, track apprentice product feedback. How are you going to keep aware of the opportunities that they have to practice their skills? I again encourage you to track feelings and reflections, and especially since there's no real best for creating an apprenticeship program, feedback from your apprentices on how the program is working, what's going well and what's not going well. That really helped me of the program as it went over time. And that wraps things up for me. So I think we can open it up to questions at this point. Hopefully I can get out of Keynote without having to force quit it, and I can take a look at some of the chats.
I have just one comment, Fred,
Sure.
before any questions. I haven't seen any questions coming up, and we're a little over 1 o'clock, so but I still see a bunch of people here. It's funny, you were talking about having really a model for apprenticeship programs, and you're kind of feeling your lung and prepare last minute and all that. That really rings through with our experience here at Kent State. I think developing a UXD program. Nobody formal education in that, so we didn't really need a model at all. There's no model curricula. There's not anything. We feel way along by option, and it's exciting. It's also nervous. It's
Very much
it's
so.
really it's a high wire act, and I've found it to be, and so it's it's terrifying in some ways. It's really exciting.
I will say that this has been the most rewarding professional experience of my life. This has been, I mean, I'm UX design ever since I discovered it, but up to this point has impacted me as deeply and as profoundly as to bring new people into this field. And the day that I wasn't able to be there on the day that the first cohort graduated, but I was streaming the ceremony online on my phone, in Chicago, I think, and it was emotional. I mean, I've had a very emotional experience with this. So and it's out very, very well for us. And I really hope that I can encourage other people to do something like this as well. And I offer myself up for private discussion at any time. I'm the world's person in the world to contact. Our contact information is all over the Google, so contact and do a Skype or something. I'm more than happy to do that.
That's great. It's a fantastic program. Key question, and it seems like he said it seems like one key part of is the cohort model of apprentices. How big does a UX team need to be to support a certain size of cohorts? So heuristic for that right size of each team.
I will say that in experience, we have a very large team. So theoretically, the apprentices they should have more than enough to do with our apprentices. What we've found is that not every project is appropriate for apprentices because some could be particularly touchy in terms of client relationship. I know at least one big project we had for a while. It was a startup that had one, the CA. So obviously we could not have apprentices on that project. And there were, just all sorts of different considerations. So not all projects were appropriate for apprentices. And even in our big design team, sometimes with 4 people, struggle to find goods for them to do all the time. A thing to consider is in just why you are doing the apprenticeship. For us, we're doing it to build out our design team. What we decided early on is that we can absorb approximately 8 junior designers a year. So what that does is that if 2 cohorts of 4, that will probably be the ideal situation for us to grow by 8, as well as make sure we have enough work for them to do and not overly tax me, because the full limit, the limit of 4 apprentices, really because of the availability of appropriate work and partially due to my availability. Second cohort, I found ways to be more efficient with how I manage my own. So, maybe nowadays I could probably swing 6 in the same amount of time.
Right. There's another question. She's curious about how many of your apprentices are new graduates versus career changes.
We had actually in both cohorts we had 3 switchers and 1. Although the very first cohort, the graduate hadn't graded yet. She's actually finishing up her senior year in school right now. Originally going to off, but this we made an exception for this person because she was really pretty great. But in the third and fourth cohort, anyone like that we have on our mind, and it's really important to make sure that we really focus on hiring apprentices as junior designers and looking at apprenticeship as sort of our tap into this extremely large market of people who are interested in UX design but don't have the experience to do it. So for it's sort of a hard decision, but yeah, we're not looking at people right now who have not already graduated.
Okay. And time for one final question. It's coming from Keith, and I'm wondering if you're going to the UXPA conference in London. The career development topic for the series of sessions, and they would have loved to have you present, but it's too late now. But you might enjoy going and attending those sessions. All seems like the professional organizations would be should be pushing apprenticeships.
I agree, and I want it to UXPA, but I did not submit this to UXPA because there's another person that's happening that weekend that I need to be in Minnesota for. So I really wanted to do that because I did Interaction in Amsterdam, and I'm doing the audit in San Diego. The one that I really wanted to hit was UXPA, but also be presenting this at the Giant conference, which seems this conference exists and it seems massive. So if you're interested, definitely seek out Giant Conf. That I think is well. There's so many presenters talking about some stuff, and then some murmuring on about it. Is basically
And is this what you're talking about at South by Southwest?
I'm actually sitting on a panel with designers from the Austin Center for Design, talking about modern frameworks for apprentices. This is an educational. This is the education-focused version of South by Southwest. So it's very different from the typical interactive conference. But yes, we've all had different experience with apprenticeship, and we're going to have what is promising to be a very, very interesting discussion about apprenticeship and how it fits into educational infrastructure.
I mean, this is such a good, it's a needed, I think you did a nice job of illustrating this with your slides, and so I'm happy to have had you here today talking about this, and I look forward to hearing from the two graduates of the apprenticeship program in 2 weeks.
Our senior apprentices?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that too. So
yeah. Okay. All right. Well, everybody for attending, and once again, you can see this. In a couple of we'll have the link up to the recorded version of this. And also, if you have any desire to make presentations at this forum yourself, go to uxconnect.wordpress.com, and hopefully we'll see you in 2 weeks.
All right. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Fred. See ya.